What's up, everybody? We are going to start this stream off by pulling the winner of the last giveaway form. We just put a new one in. So if you guys go to giveaway.th3dstudio.com, you should get the new giveaway form for the rest of this month. And we're going to just pull the winner now so I don't forget. All right, so let's go to the main screen share here. And let's go ahead and spin the wheel and see what we get here. So this is for our giveaway that we do every month. And who is the winner? Gary. Is Gary watching? Gary, you are the winner of the gift card for August and like first 2 weeks of September. We didn't have that many entries, so we kind of lumped it in together. So let me go ahead and just make a little note here, and I'll put that over there, and then we'll get on with the stream. So, all right, I'm trying to think of what new stuff we have. So, we actually do have a big thing. Our new help center is live. I don't know if you guys have checked it out yet, but it's finally done. It took us about 2 months to get it all done. We moved over about 320 something articles. So the new system is actually a lot easier to navigate. So you guys should have a easier time finding what you need. So I'll just show that here. So if we go to the support.th3dstudio.com site, this is what you'll get here. You can basically just type in whatever you want, like, oh, I'm looking for Ender 3 firmware, and it'll start searching our database. And we actually have everything broken out now, so it's easier to find. So we had different we had different boards supported for different models, and for like the Ender 3 is a good example because these ship with 32-bit and 8-bit boards. We have those separated out so you can actually differentiate between the two easier. And then for aftermarket boards, they're actually broken out in different categories, so you can actually search like this. The next thing, once I get some extra time, is to go over and build a page where you can just like head a drop down, like here's, select your brand, select your model, and then select what board you have. But you see everything's easier to navigate. We got a lot of pictures on here, so you can just click what you want, and it'll take you to the product information and videos. We actually have a lot of the videos from our YouTube channel directly in the Help Center now, so you don't have to go to our YouTube channel or even know that they're on there to find videos for product installations. You can see the firmware here is broken out by different printer brands, and we've added quite a few other ones here. And when there's a printer that's like a rebrand, like Monoprice is one that rebrands it, we actually have specific pages, so you don't have to know like, oh, the Maker Select is really a WANHOW Duplicator i3. We have a specific page for the actual Maker Select, so if you're searching for a Maker Select, it's easier to find what you're looking for. And we got a picture of the printer itself on the firmware page, as well as what your control board should look like, so you can make sure that you're flashing the right firmware. And then Creality is the only one that we have a ton of stuff in, because obviously we do a lot of stuff with Creality printers. But you can see here we have each one broken out. So the CR10, these would be the older 8-bit ones. And again, if we open this in a new tab, you get a picture of the printer and what board you're going to be flashing for. So if your board doesn't match the picture, then you can assume that it's probably not the right firmware. So we have them broken up. There's the CR10 and the CR10S models. And you see here the CR10S models, these came with these other 2560 base boards, so it's got a different picture. And then you can see here there's also now an aftermarket boards section here. So if we have firmware for aftermarket boards for a specific model, they'll be listed under the aftermarket boards here. And you can see here we've got our two easy board versions, and then Creality's own 427 board version. And then we also have, if we go back up to the main unified section, we also have DIY firmware posted here for our board in MKS SGNL. And then I'm still working on, like right now, the SKR firmwares are available. They're just on our GitHub here. So you can actually see the packages here. We just don't have dedicated pages for them. And the reason for that is we're going to be monetizing these. Since they aren't a product that we sell, they aren't a stock control board. So this will be the last, basically 2.50. I think we're on 205A because there was a small bug patch we did for the Ender 3 series. This will be the last like free release. After that, we're going to be charging for it because it's not our product and it's not a stock board. So basically how our firmware works is if it's a product we sell, we'll do firmware for it, whether it's our board or not. or if it's a stock board, so we can add functionality to the stock boards, we'll do those, and those will be on there. But the SKR one, since it's a competitor's board and we literally purchase these boards and do testing on them, and that takes up our time, we have to find a way to monetize these because we are constantly having to test new firmware releases, especially when we do big releases on multiple different boards, and it's very time consuming. So basically we need to justify the time we're spending on this competitor's product by having it bring in some additional revenue. So this will be the last release for free for the SKR series boards. The benefit is if it is something that people want, and we are seeing people purchasing the firmware, that'll open up so we can actually go ahead and start purchasing more boards and doing more firmware, because we all know that Big Tree Tech does not do good, easy to use firmware, or hell, even firmware that works out of the box in most cases. So, but yeah, so we've got tons of different ones here. It's super easy to navigate. You can either just browse through that or just, you know, do the search here, and this search dynamically updates. So as people start searching different things, these will actually change. And if we look on the Help Center homepage here, you can actually see what the top articles are. These are the ones that people are clicking, and this updates every 24 hours. So the system's actually tracking everything. And the really interesting thing is that let's see here. The really interesting thing is our system actually now can track the downloads here. Come on. And the cool thing is we can actually get statistics now and see how many downloads for different things we have. So if I sort by the most downloaded, you can see right here, our #1 download is the firmware for the Creality V4 series board. So the 422, the 431s, the 427s, followed by our STL pack. And then it's really interesting too, the other top ones then firmware after the 4 series boards is the Creality ramps and the Melzi boards. And then just other random stuff here, so drivers. But we have now statistics to see what people are actually downloading, which will also give us a good idea is, you know, do we just retire certain machine support and stop spending time on it if we're really not getting any downloads on it? So we can actually track this and get analytics on what is the most used firmware, so we can kind of figure out, okay, where should we allocate time in terms of doing development on the software and testing. Because if there's basically like, oh, this has like 2 downloads in the last 6 months, it's probably not something worth continuing doing firmware updates for. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy it. It took a lot of time. I actually did this last weekend. That's literally what I did for most of the weekend, was migrating everything over to the Help Center. And then if you guys do find any broken links, just send us a message on the Contact Us page and paste the link. Like, so, you know, if you go to a link and it gives you a 404 error, copy that link that's in your address bar and paste it to us, and we'll figure out where it should be redirected to. So, but yeah, so now that this is done, my next thing will be updating our code base, because we're on 2.0.9.3 for Marlin. We're going to be going up to the latest 2.1 series, so that's gonna be a lot of work. So yeah, but it's something that is the next step. So now we got the new center created. We're gonna be doing some more firmware updates, since that won't be taking up my time. And then I also want to start overhauling our main website, so that things are also easier to find on there too as well. All right, let's see what question we have. So if you guys are just joining us or you're new, the whole point of the stream is to ask us questions. The bot will pick up your question, but it only works on YouTube. So if you're watching on Facebook or Twitter or Twitch, you can post it. One of our mods will try to grab your question, but the bot currently only works on YouTube. And I still haven't figured out how to get it to like work on multi-platforms. It's kind of a pain, but it is what it is. So anyways, we do have some questions in here. I do have one last thing, is we are nearing completion on the Ender 7 LCD project. This should be the last revision, so we finally got the housing all done. I just have to do a final fitment test on it, and then once that's done, we'll be doing the soldering and everything. So yeah, I'm pretty excited to get that done, because I want to start messing with that printer. You can see it's sitting right there. So and then I do have just a random home project. I don't know if we're going to record it, but, you know, this is the kind of stuff I love doing 3D printing for is this is actually, so there's a little Meanwhile power supply here. And this is a box that my brother and I designed in Fusion 360. You can see here there's a little Node MCU. So this is a Wi-Fi, not this thing, that's a step down. But you can see the ESP8266 in here, and these are actually two that we actually sell these little MOSFET boards already. These are good for up to 5 amps. So this is to control 2 LED light strips, and 12 volt comes in here. This little thing is a step down to give the Node MCU board 5 volts, and then I have 2 outputs here. So I got one here and one here, and these are 18 gauge wires, and the one going in here is 14 gauge, and this is a 100 watt power supply, so it's only 8.5 amps, but I need about 7 amps for the lights. But we're putting lights in a curio cabinet we just got for the living room to put crystals in there, and one channel is going to be white lights, and the other channel is actually going to be black lights because there's crystals that react to the black lights. So yeah, this is the kind of stuff I use the printers for when I'm not printing parts for other printers, is making electronics enclosures for different projects. So, and you can see here I've got crimp ferrules on there for the wires going to the screw terminals, and this for a strain relief. I actually just put a knot in the wire so you can't pull it out. So nice and simple. And then I've also got access to the micro USB port here if I need to plug this in and update it. So and yeah, I've got rolls of strip lights sitting. You can see them right there. So yeah, that's my latest project. The other thing I got a design enclosure for is I built a controller for the electric smoker that we've got here that will be it'll be an electrical box. We're gonna print an ABS, so it's higher temp resistant because it's gonna be near the smoker. Have a single outlet in there, and then an SSR. We're actually using the SSR that we sell in our shop, the Maker ones, and it will be basically a Wi-Fi control to keep the smoker at the exact temperature we want, using, again, an ESP board. And we do have, I did order a bunch of ESP stuff, so if you guys are looking to play with some of this DIY stuff, we are going to have the parts in our shop. And I've been getting samples from multiple different suppliers because I've had very hit and miss luck with these ESP Wi-Fi chips. Some of them are great, some of them are bad. So we've gone ahead and, like we do with everything else, tested it, and then we're buying from the place that gives us the best quality stuff. So, all right, let's see. What questions do we have here? So that's my test question. That doesn't really count. Peter, oh, I don't see. I think you're just chatting. 4 questions about the E7. Put them in the chat. There is a cooldown. I think it's a 1-minute cooldown on here. What is a Doom port for the... Oh, Doom port, like running Doom on the easy board? I don't got time for that. Carlos Alonso's got the first actual question in the queue here. He says, does the easy board V2 support any other 128/64 LCD that besides the typically blue backlit when I want to run a small Voron style LCD? You could if you figured the pinouts out, and the pinouts are actually documented in the pins file. And let me pull the pins file because I have them. Basically, you would want to run standard Marlin because you're completely DIYing it, or you can go ahead and look at our code and figure out where we're setting the LCD values. But it depends. Like, you're not going to get an SD slot on an LCD, but in terms of driving an LCD, you could determine that because for example, like the CR20 is a LCD we support, and that's actually technically a mini panel type, they call it. And we have an adapter board for that. Now, I don't know if that pinout for the CR20 matches any of the mini panel types. I don't have any mini panels floating around here, but it may work. It may not. The adapter board's like $6 or $7. But you could always use my favorite little things, which I use in this project. These are female to female, but there are other versions of these jumper wires, and we actually sell these in our shop, that have a male connector with a pin sticking out. So you could literally figure out what the pins are on the board, jump it over to the plug on the LCD, and make your own little adapter harness. I've done that with testing. It's actually how we figured out how to wire and design the PCBs for the adapter boards, is, moving them around and making sure everything works, documenting it, and then making a PCB. But in terms of figuring out what pins go to where, so you would look up the pins on your LCD to figure out what pins it has and what would need to be connected, and then you go to your board. And this is applicable to any board, not just our control board, so just so we're clear. In Marlin, there's what's called a pins file. So let me pull that up here. All right. Come on, let's go back. All right, so if we go into the Marlin source code folder, so I'm under here. So if you download our firmware, you'll see inside the firmware you have Marlin, and you drill down, go to source, and then pins, and then they're sorted by CPU architecture. So the EasyBoard V2 is F4 series, so we go to STM32F4, and then we look for the EasyBoard pins file. You can see here, pins EasyBoard V2. So if I double click this, this will open it up. I use Notepad++. But if we scroll through here, we can see all of our pin definitions. Okay, so here's our NeoPixel pin. Here's what our servo pin uses. The Centros homing pins hooked up to the drivers. You know, all of our pins are going to be located in this pins file. Now, if we scroll to the bottom here, there's actually a little ASCII art layout that I put in here that actually tells you what pins are on the connector here. So if you're looking at the connector, see how there's no little pipe character there? That's the keyed portion. So if you're looking at it from the top down, you got your 5-volt ground, and then you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 data pins. Okay, and these are defined here as EXP pins. So EXP103 pin is PB15. So if we look here, it's PB15. So basically you can go and figure out what pins are and then define them. Now it may work. You can see here, this is what we need for the MKS. They call it the MKS Mini in Marlin, but that's what the CR20 uses for its LCD definition. So if you're using like a mini panel style, you could tell the firmware that you have this LCD, the MKS Mini, and then jump from the pins here to the LCD display pins. I don't know what LCD you'd use, but typically most LCDs will tell you what their pinout is if the manufacturer that's making them is competent. So you've got different things here. So you got your MOSI, your CS, your SCK, and then the EN2, EN1, and ENC. These are for the encoder wheel. So the ENC is the click. The EN1, EN2 is the pulses when you're turning the knob. So basically you can just do jumper wires from the header of the board to the LCD once you figure out what the pinout is on your LCD. So in terms of pinout for our board, it's all documented in this pins file. So these are all the pins that are available on our board. So you can have at it and go nuts. Like, you should be able to get it working. It's not something I would personally spend time on doing or spend time on, but if you want to get into the guts of it, this is definitely recommended. The other thing, if you guys are using the mini panels, this is something that is usually on the mini type panels, is the contrast settings. So one thing to look out for if you are messing with getting one of these running on any board is the LCD might be working, but it might be very dim. And so you might have to set the contrast setting to a default. You can see here, for the CR20 display, we actually had to use an initial contrast value of 160. Now, the thing is, this value is also stored in your EEPROM. So if you don't clear your EEPROM, the contrast default will be there, but the EEPROM might have a different setting, making it too light where you can't see it. So there's all these little gotchas that I've learned from doing this stuff over the years. So hopefully that helps out. But yeah, in general, if you're trying to find pins, like pinouts for the board, the manufacturer doesn't have them. The Marlin source code, if that board is supported in there, is a really good location to go to. So I see Tom Taylor saying the giveaway form defaults to our site. I just updated that redirect a little bit before the stream, so try opening a private browser window and see if you can enter there. You probably have a cached version on your browser, so it is working. I just tested it, but try opening it in like a private window. Do a Control-Shift-N, and that should bring it up. Okay, so 3D Experience says, is there any way to tell if a stepper motor needs center wire leads swapped like Creality? Does the spec sheet tell you? So the spec sheet could tell you, but the easiest way is hook it up, and if the motor does not turn smoothly, meaning it just shakes, that's usually where I will start, is just swap the two setter pins, because it will energize the coils, but they kind of like crosstalk instead of actually moving. So But yeah, the spec sheet could tell you too. You could also probe out the coils. There's actually a video on this channel. If you just search TH3D stepper motor test, it should come up with that. And I talk about identifying the pins, because basically you have 2 coils in your motors, and you could have most motors are your one coil is on pins 1 and 3, and the other one's on 4 and 6. But sometimes the one coil is on 1 and 4, and the other one's on 3 and 6, and that's where that center pin swapping comes into play. So, but you're not going to hurt anything if you hook it up. It's not going to blow your driver out or anything. It's just not going to turn. It'll usually just shake or vibrate or do nothing. But yeah. But if there's a spec sheet, it will usually tell you where the actual pins are connected to on the coil. So basically, if your coil setup is 1 and 3, 4 and 6, then your center wires typically do not need to be swapped. And the other thing too is I've also seen people swapping the who the hell? Sorry, someone's pulling in my drive. I don't know if it's like an Amazon delivery or something. But anyways, sometimes I've also seen it where they swap it at the motherboard side of the cable. So make sure you check when you look at the cable, check both ends, because sometimes they're sneaky and they'll switch it at the motherboard side. But most of the time it will be switched at the motor side, but not all the time. You just got to kind of keep an eye on things and be aware and track your stuff. So Peter Anderson asked about, can I buy the LCD upgrade for the Ender 7 as an STL? Shipping is slow and expensive. Yeah, we will have the STL available like we do the other ones. So that's like, we get it. Like, not everybody wants to wait, a month sometimes for shipping, or pay the crazy, insane prices that some of these shipping companies are charging. But yeah, we will, once it's done. Like, we're not Big Tree Tech. We don't like releasing stuff to people before it's done. So I've had a lot of other stuff going on here, just trying to get everything done in terms of managing the business. So this has been a little bit slower, and it's my fault. So, but I only got so many hours in the day. Let's see. 3D Experiment says, is the Meanwell 350 watt PSU enough for a 330 by 330 printer printing ABS, ASA, PETG? The answer is I don't know, because I don't know what kind of printer you're using. So because it really depends on what your draw is. So like, if you have a 400 watt bed, the answer is going to be no. If you only have a 200 watt bed, the answer is yes. You got to find out what the load is on all your stuff. Now, if you're not sure how much load things are going to have, you can measure the resistance. Like, your bed heater is going to be your major load on most printers, okay? Especially if it's a DC bed. If you measure the resistance of the bed, you can then use Ohm's law to calculate based on the input voltage. So let's say it's a 2 ohm resistance and you're giving it 24 volts. You can then use that to figure out how much power it's going to draw, and it's going to be pretty close. There is like, the hell, there's like all these weird noises happening. But I literally use ohmslawcalculator.com. And so, like, just for an example here, Remo's freaking out. Hey, enough. Just for example here, so let's say I have a 24 volt input, and I know, and my bed's like 2.2 ohms of resistance. I can expect that bed to pull around 260 watts of power. And just like as something as simple as, like, let's say it's a 1.2 ohm resistance, the power draw jumps up significantly. So you can see here, you plug in your 2 known values, so your ohms and your volts, and it'll give you what your current draw is going to be and what your power draw is going to be. So you can see, like, even you may think like, oh, it's just like, we'll just go up like 0.3. It's going to be a significant difference, just with that little bit of resistance change, especially at 24 volts. So like, for example, it's going to be less dramatic if we do 12. So a 1.5 ohm resistance at 12 volts is only going to give us about 96 watts of heating. Okay. And if I go ahead and go to 2.0, it's still not that much. Okay. So you gotta take that into consideration. Basically, the lower the resistance your heater is, whether it's your hot end heater or your bed heater, the more current it's going to pull and the more watts it's going to pull. So you want to be looking at this and this. So, you got to figure out what you're putting on the machine and figure that out. And usually I'll go, about 80 80% of the PSU capacity, sometimes 90 if like the next step up is like really expensive. You know, especially if you're using a mean well is usually pretty good to go about 10, sometimes 15% past their rated value. But yeah, you got to sit down and calculate, figure out what your biggest draw is, and then add up all your currents. And, you know, the thing is too, let's say you have like a printer that is going to need 20 amps. If you crank everything up, turn your hot end on, turn your bed on, turn your motors on, your fans, and maybe you're at like about 100% capacity, your power supply, that's only going to be drawing that during the initial heat up. And then after that, once the bed and the hot end are at temperature, your draw is actually going to go down considerably, because now they're in the regulation mode where they're only turning on when they need to maintain the temperature. So, yeah. All right. So Peter's asking about the easy firmware for the Ender 7. The easy firmware is only supported, our easy firmware site is only supported by our easy boards, and the Ender 7 will not be an officially supported printer, but we do have our, what we call our DIY firmware, which is if you're using the easy boards in a universal print application. I have a couple printers here using our easy boards that are not an officially supported model, but I put them in and basically did a custom build with them. So, let's see. Config is asking, will we be selling the 150 watt meanwhile power supplies? I need to do a fitment test on the Ender 2, which is on my to-do list for this week. So look out for a video on that. It'll probably just be a hangout stream, because I'm going to go in and take it apart and try to do the stream in a way that I could cut it up later and make a video on how to swap it out. But I'm going to be doing the Tough Extruder V2 on the Ender 2 Pro and the 150 watt meanwhile power supply swap out on that machine. So that'll be 2 videos coming out of that printer, and then it'll go back to Krista. That thing's going to be so heavily updated. It's not even funny, but she'll have a nice machine. So, already answered that one. William's asking IoT question, which is fine. You guys can ask IoT questions. I'm a big home automation nerd. What do you use? I'm assuming, what do I use to control my ESP's home assistant? Yeah, so like custom projects like this, I could use what's called WLED firmware, but for something that's not RGB and not using addressable lights, I'm actually just using ESP home and a PWM output. But yeah, everything in terms of my smart home stuff goes through Home Assistant. That is my central point of connection for everything, whether it's Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, Z-Wave, 433 megahertz. I've got a mix of everything here. So if you guys haven't messed with Home Assistant, I highly recommend it. It's awesome, and it's open source. Mears is asking, I've got a Monoprice Mini. I try to set the hot temp to a temp above 235. It won't heat past the desired temp minus 10 degrees. The temps below 230 will heat to the desired temp. So that's a firmware issue. And so that's probably running Marlin or whatever firmware they're running. I don't know if is the Mini or the one with that like weird color screen. I think that was one I avoided. I'm pretty sure it's got that color screen with the knob. Am I correct? The little cantilever one. I think that's it. But that's a PTFE line hot end, and they probably have that because you can't go, you can't push the temps past. I wouldn't push them past 230 because it's just PTFE, especially the cheap stuff that comes with most of these printers, are really just low quality. So, but yeah, that's going to be a firmware limitation. I would not push it past 230. But that printer, I don't believe anybody's modified firmware for that. Last time I looked at it, which was a number of years ago when those first came out, there was no source code available, as far as I know. That could have changed since then. But yeah, Williams asking, any plans to add Clipper support to the help center? No, we are not doing Clipper stuff right now. My two guys, Peter and Tor, are playing with Clipper, and they are working on some basic articles, but we will not, for the foreseeable future, do any official Clipper support, because Clipper is overly complicated, and most people, it's going to be way too much work. We do have support services, so if you guys need help with your printer, we do have paid support services, but in terms of doing Clipper support as part of our product support, it's too much to deal with. and they're constantly changing it. So the problem is too, if we write documentation for it, it could be outdated next month, which then puts more burden on us to have to keep editing and updating the articles. So yeah, Marlin's the way to go if you just want your printer to work. But Clipper's a cool firmware. It's very time consuming, and they're constantly changing it. And it's a lot of work. So if you want to go ahead and use Clipper, go ahead. Our Easy ABL kits do work with Clipper, but basically if you're messing with Clipper and you're well versed on enough, you should know that they work with it because it's just a standard sensor. So if you're asking if people are asking question like, if someone asks a question like, does the Easy ABL work with Clipper? Just because you're asking that question, I already know you have not done your homework on Clipper. Because if you had, you would know the answer is yes, because Clipper supports auto bed leveling sensors, whether it's a BL Touch or a CR Touch or Easy ABL or any type of, inductive or capacitive probes. They support that kind of stuff. JT says, besides cost and maintenance, what would the difference between a belt-driven 3D printer and a ball screw-driven 3D printer be? I'm assuming ball screw, you're meaning lead screw. Ball screws are really expensive. I think the only printer I had with a ball screw on there was the old Wanhao D6, but I'm assuming so here's the thing. You have lead screws on most printers, and belts are usually on X and Y. Belted Z's are becoming a thing. I don't really understand the draw to them other than moving the bed faster. Most lead screws you can run about 15 millimeters a second on most machines, like even on this big guy here. But there typically is less maintenance on lead screws or ball screws just because they don't stretch out. Now, everything does wear out, so you can have your lead screw wear down over time, which is a long time, but mainly what's going to wear out first is going to be like the lead screw nuts. But yeah, in terms of maintenance, like your printer belts are going to last a long time. Like we're just starting to get printers where belts are failing. I had this one actually snap after about 3.5 years of use. And I know Sean just replaced a belt that wore out on one of our print farm machines because he was getting weird print artifacts, and the belt didn't snap, but it had like an S shape to it because it was just stretching out. So belts are consumable items and something you should check. But I'm not sure what basically ball screw driven printers, you're not going to run them as fast if you're talking about ball screws on the X and Y. But I'm going to wrap that up because it's not really a very good question because it needs more specificity in terms of like what axis are we talking about. So on the Z, I would much prefer having a lead screw or ball screw on the Z, but X and Y, you're not going to be able to move as fast just because they're so heavy and large. So belts are gonna be a lot faster in terms of X and Y movement. Here's asking the display upgrade for the Ender 7. Will the display upgrade for the Ender 7 work with the 12864 kit you sell? Oh, I think you already asked that. So basically, we'll list on the product page once we put the STL up. But it'll be for the Creality 12864 screens. That's what we designed those for because they don't require any adapters. So while we can make like those red PCB ones, like the rep style ones, work with the stock boards, they do require an adapter board, so it's just easier and cheaper for customers to just use the Creality LCDs. They're pretty easy to find even outside of us, and they work well. Dominic Versailles was asking about Easy boards being back in stock. They are in stock. You might have a cached page on your browser if it's showing out of stock. But we did just get a shipment in last week. So we are getting them in. We are still having, like, in terms of delays with things coming in and getting chips. We are still getting the chips. It's just instead of being able to run like 500 boards, we're only able to run like maybe 100 boards. So we got 99 in last week. And we have more in production right now. So, but yeah, they're back in stock and they're shipping, and we actually dropped the price on them because we did change how our support stuff is going. So basically, if you want to be able to get quicker support, even when our help desk is loaded down, we do have a priority support upgrade that you can add on for $20. But right now, all of our support times are, business as usual, like 1 to 2 business days tops. And that was the other reason too for updating the help center to make it easier for you guys to find stuff on your own instead of having to have our tech people search it and then send you the link. So, because there was a lot of that going on with the support stuff. But anyways, I think there's the one last question you guys need to answer. I got time for about probably like 2 or 3 more questions if they're quick ones. And about 15 minutes, we're going to wrap this up. So these usually end at 5. And it's 4:44 right now. Oh, 4:45. Anderson Quarter, how can I contribute / help with the Clipper stuff? Jump in our Discord server, and I don't know if you are in there, but I know you have my contact info. We don't really have like a coordinated like Clipper effort here, but we do have a Clipper support channel in our Discord server, and there's a lot of guys in our Discord server that run Clipper. So you know, Clipper's not a bad firmware, it's just very complicated and they tend to break things with updates. So it makes us apprehensive to be like, oh yeah, we'll support it, because we could burn so much time, which is literally money, trying to do Clipper support, you know, when people are not doing the time. So basically, if you got the time to read all their documentation and go on their forum, or not forums, go on their, you know, Discord server and, you know, Google things and watch YouTube videos, like, you can get Clipper running. But the thing is, it's a very rapidly evolving system of multiple pieces of software, and it's very involved. So whereas Marlin, you just run Marlin on the board, that's it. You don't need an extra board to run Clipper on. So like Clipper, you can't just run Clipper on your board. You need another board running the software stack, like a Raspberry Pi, which are very expensive right now, in addition to your printer's control board to run it. So you have multiple layers of software at play, versus Marlin it's just on the board. You run your printer standalone with that. Whereas there's a lot more pieces of a puzzle going together for Clipper, so which makes it complicated just by the nature of how it's designed. So anyways, I don't see any more questions, so we're going to wrap this up. And that means it's time for Remo to get his dingo stick. Do you want your dingo stick? He's being a little boy laying on his bed over there. What? Are you waiting to see if I actually get it out? He's like sitting here watching me. Come here. Come here. Can we sit? Shake. Sit. Shake. Speak. Touch. Good boy. There you go. All right, everybody. I will see you guys on the next stream. If you guys didn't get a chance to enter the giveaway, or you're watching this on a replay, we do leave the forum open for a couple hours after the stream. Nemo said, one question: what slicer settings would you cheat to help printed parts with higher tolerances fit each other? Maybe scale the model down just by a tiny bit, like 0.5%. Yeah. The other thing is, when you're designing parts, I found like for lids here, 0.2 tolerance around the entire lid helps a lot. So anyways, I will see you guys on the next one. And as always, happy printing. I will see you guys later.